Dr. Shiva, the title of your talk tonight is Food Security in Women's Hands. So I wonder if you could begin by talking a little bit about what role particularly that women play in real food production around the world, and why it's important for us to think about what relationship women have to food security.
Around the world, women have been the seed keepers historically. And in the majority of third world societies, they still are the seed keepers. And wherever women save the seed and share the seed, there's no scarcity of seed. There's no problem with seeds getting diseases, because these seeds are bred for resilience. Women are still the majority farmers of the world, a fact that is never noticed, because all promotional stuff has the man as a farmer. Even the Green Revolution in India had a turbaned man as the farmer of India. Women are the processors and transformers of food. And the minute women stop being seed savers, food providers, producers, processors, you don't get the men doing it. What you get is corporations taking control and turning a few people into slaves in animal factories, on farms. The entire northern agricultural economy is run by illegal migrant labor. That's where it's coming from. So the reason we need to reclaim food security in women's hands is because that's where the values, the knowledge, the skills for another food system lie. You only have two alternatives: either women's paradigm or the global agribusiness paradigm. And I do believe we're at that stage where the women's paradigm must be universalized and men too must come into it, and that must then become the popular revolution, the real green revolution.
And you have a great project that you started in India called the Vandana Project, if I'm pronouncing that correct. I'm just wondering if you'd say a little bit about that, maybe as one model of of what we need to kind of promote and continue.
I started Navdanya in 1987 as a movement to save seeds. You know, the early part of the last century, when we were colonized by the British and the British Empire controlled 85% of the territories of the world, Gandhi did not take out a gun. What he did is take out a spinning wheel and started to spin. And I just kept thinking, what would be today's spinning wheel? And I thought of the seed. And all I knew is we have to save seeds as an alternative. We have to, through the seed, empower the farmers to recognize that saving seed is not just their birthright, it's their duty. And through that, build a movement to not allow the inevitability of 5 companies controlling our lives. And that's exactly what's happened in these years. Today, we have established 54 community seed banks. We have seed banks for climate resilience. We've got the most amazing seed banks for rice diversity, 3,000 varieties. If you go to our farm in Dehradun right now, you'll see 560 varieties growing that are adapted to that climate. Vegetables, millets that can be the future foods that were treated as non-food stuff. I really believe that's where the future lies. And I personally feel extremely happy that now 500,000 farmers are part of the network, 500,000 farmers, who've either participated in non-cooperation with laws that establish seed monopoly, have established GMO-free villages where no GM can be sold, chemical-free villages, practiced organic, and it has become the largest network of direct marketing of good organic produce, showing that it's totally possible with very, very little money to build another economy, another politics, a living economy and a living democracy.
You talk about in your book, Earth Democracy, this idea of the commons and reclaiming the commons, which when I hear you talk, it sounds like that's sort of what you're talking about. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about what you mean by the commons and how important it is us for trying to sort of think about the importance of reclaiming that, you know, as a global movement.
Life exists as long as the vital sustenance base for life is in the commons. The minute a river is privatized, people don't have water. The minute Coca-Cola takes out groundwater, people don't get water. The minute Monsanto has a patent on seed, farmers get into debt, and we get the situation that we see in parts of India where the genetically engineered BT cotton is a monopoly. We get farmer suicides, 200,000 of them. So the commons really are both the future of democracy, because that's where people make direct decisions, but not on the basis of individual rights and pettiness, but on the larger concept of the common good and with it the common responsibility. And related to the common responsibility, a deep awareness of limits and an awareness of how within the limits there's abundance. Because we've been taught to believe that if you have to obey limits, there's scarcity. The opposite is true. If you overexploit the river, you will have no river. If you overexploit species, you're going to have species extinction. If you're going to overexploit fossil fuels, you're going to get climate havoc, which we're getting right now. So the commons is the ecological imperative, it's an ethical imperative, it's a political imperative, and it's an imperative for staying alive. My life's work has been dedicated to defense and recovery of the commons, whether it be in the form of seed, when it was assumed that seed should be genetically engineered and patented. We started to say we will not obey laws that impose seed patents on us, just as Gandhi refused to obey laws on the salt monopoly. Water. Small villages like Plachimada have defeated giant corporations like Coca-Cola. A water democracy movement based on the idea of water as commons stopped the privatization of Delhi's water supply. And I think the whole climate debate is falsely put in the idea of trading in pollution, where the polluters get paid, when what we really need to be dealing with is the ultimate enclosure of the final commons, the air we breathe, we share, not just amongst each other, but with the plants that give us the oxygen that we breathe. The atmosphere is a commons, and we've got to learn to live with the commons, we've got to learn to think like the commons, and I am thrilled that today the Nobel Committee has given the economics prize to Professor Ostrom, who, as a political scientist and economist, has done the economics of the commons, something that was not fashionable among economists.
You mentioned the issue of climate change and climate justice, and I know you wrote a piece recently that was called The Poor Are Burdened Twice, and talking about sort of the folly of carbon trading, which obviously the U.S. and many of the other sort of, the G20 countries seem to kind of be advocating for. And unfortunately, even a lot of environmental groups in the United States sort of endorse sort of the idea of carbon trading as a way to sort of solve the problem. And I'm just sort of wondering if you could sort of speak a little bit about sort of the folly of the idea of carbon trading.
The reason carbon trading is wrong is, first and foremost, it's the equivalent of the indulgences the Catholic Church used to have, where they said, you can continue to sin, just give us a little bribe, and we'll allow you to continue to sin, as if that was the moral order of the universe. Carbon trading is today's indulgences, and it's coming at a time, just as the Catholic Church lost its reputation because of those practices, the market economy is going to lose its reputation. The market economy anyway failed us last year when the financial instruments that were totally fictitious burst. Those same financial instruments are now being used to create a trade in pollution. The same investments, the same derivatives, the same hedge funds now are seeking to become super rich. But overall, carbon trading has two false assumptions. First, that the atmosphere is not a shared commons by life on Earth, but it is the pollution sink for the polluting industry. The second reason why it's wrong is it turns the polluter should pay principle into the polluter gets paid principle, where the polluting industry gets richer now, because first they don't have to reduce pollution. What we need is a very direct, simple carbon tax, because these instruments are false instruments. These instruments are based on the assumption of the enclosure of the commons, and they're taking away the rights of people.